Del Mar began on August 14, 1882, when the California Southern Railroad train went over the tracks on its new route from San Diego to San Bernardino. Theodore M. Loop, a contractor and engineer who worked on the project, obtained acreage and built a home on a mesa just north of San Diego, a setting he described as the most attractive place on the entire coast. That same year, Colonel Jacob Taylor came with his family to live in Rancho Penasquitos. He met Loop, who suggested they build a town. Taylor was a dynamic visionary who pictured Del Mar as a seaside resort for the rich and famous. In the early 1900s, when South Coast Land Company began to develop San Diego County, Del Mar became alive. From its elegant opening in 1910, Hotel Del Mar served as a magnet for Hollywood stars of the silent film days. Del Mar Village also offered dancing pavilions, a bathing pool, a golf course, and its own powerhouse. From its opening day of the Del Mar racetrack on July 3, 1937, an exciting new era began in Del Mar. Bing Crosby took the leadership role in making the Del Mar Turf Club, Pat O'Brien became vice president, and Bill Quigley became general manager. The track was hailed as Bing's baby and Movieland's own track. In 1938, Bing Crosby recorded the song that would go on to open and close every day of racing since the early days, Where the Turf Meets the Surf. For decades, the racing season had brought crowds to Del Mar. Hollywood celebrities that frequented the Del Mar racetrack included Jimmy Durante, Betty Grable, Lucille Ball, Desi Arnaz, Bob Hope, Jerry Lewis, Jack Benny, and many others. Join us as we take you through a journey back in time to discover the rich celebrity history of Del Mar. Welcome to Del Mar Heydays.
Where the turf meets the surf at Del Mar.
Welcome to Del Mar Heydays, a celebrity history of Del Mar. I'm your host, Florence Canada. Ever wonder what Del Mar was like in the old days? Well, today I'm going to take you back in time to the Del Mar of the 1930s, when Del Mar was a beautiful and elegant seaside resort for the rich and famous. Today we welcome very special guests. They will share with us their stories of the old Del Mar times. Our first guest is Don Terwilliger. Welcome, Don.
Thank you very much.
Don, you have such an amazing past and history in Del Mar. You are a lifelong Del Mar resident. Tell us a little bit about your family in Del Mar.
My family in Del Mar. Well, my family in Del Mar, they arrived, my mother's family and my father's family arrived the same year, about 1924-25. My father's family went to Rancho Santa Fe and bought close to 300 acres there and built a house. The house is a very well-known house. It's a Lillian Rice house. It's on the National Registry. And my mother was an orphan, and she came to Del Mar with her uncle and aunt from Pasadena. And my aunt eventually became the postmaster in Del Mar for 30 years.
Oh, how wonderful.
And my father worked in landscape architecture for about 25 years. And that's the early 30s. And that's about the family in the 30s.
Yes, and what are your beach memories of Del Mar on this beautiful beach we have here in Del Mar?
Beach memories. Well, playing with the Crosby kids, especially Gary. He was the oldest one. He was my age. And mother would take me to the beach every day because she was down there all the time. And of course, she knew the Crosbys. And she actually loved celebrities, so she would hunt them out. And there was a lot of them in Del Mar during those times.
And do you remember Betty Grable?
Do I remember Betty Grable? Oh, yes, I do. Of course, when I was a kid, and I loved all her movies. I actually have all of her movies right now. But she used to come down originally with George Raft, and this was in the 30s. And then later on, of course, when she married Harry James, they would come down. They would stay. George Raft and Betty would stay at the Hotel Del Mar. Then later, when she married Harry James, they would stay at the Hotel Del Mar. In fact, there is a one cottage still left on the property, the old hotel's property, that they lived in the summertime.
Oh,
they lived in a suite there. Then later on, she lived in 4 different houses on the beach. And there was one house in particular, that's where Joe Harper and Barbara Harper have their house now. There was another kind of a low board and batten house, and they rented that for a long while. And
Wonderful.
every day I would go down with my blanket, and she was always out on the beach with her dog and a little black poodle, and I would actually stalk her. And
You were in love with her, weren't you?
oh yes, and I was very young, but I loved Betty Grable, and I had several encounters with her later on and during that time.
How wonderful. Don, you have such an amazing professional career. I understand you were a professional dancer. Tell us a little bit about your career.
Well, actually, I danced for 31 years professionally, until I had a very bad accident with my leg, and I'm a cripple. But I worked, my very first job in Hollywood, I would say, would be of any consequence, would be at the old Moulin Rouge. It's a nightclub. And from the Moulin Rouge, I did, for the same producer, I went to Vegas and I worked the Riviera, the Stardust, excuse me, not the Stardust, the Riviera, the Desert Inn.
How wonderful.
And 6 hotels in Vegas.
And you also worked with James Manfield.
Yes, I worked in her nightclub act.
Oh, how wonderful.
And do you want me to tell you something about the club act?
Surely.
Okay. Well, it was a beautiful act. They spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on it. She got a terrific salary, and we were supposed to go on for 1 year. And so we opened at the Dunes, and it was very well choreographed by Jack Cole. And she decided in it that she, when all her supervision would leave, she would get a little risque. I mean, like dropping her top. And so that happened once too often, and they called all the bosses in and gave her a reprimand. And actually, we didn't play that whole year throughout the United States because after we were supposed to go to the Harrah's Tahoe, and Mr. Harrah came to see her one night when she happened to do one of her annex, and he said, "I'm not having that in my hotel."
Don, you have such wonderful memories of Del Mar. I want to thank you so much for being here today, and you are truly a part of Del Mar history. Please stay with us as we watch another amazing and fabulous interview, and for more Del Mar history.
Turf meets the surf down at old Del Mar. Take a plane, take a train, take a car. There's a smile on every face and a winner in each race, where the turf meets the surf at Del Mar.
I'm Stephanie Sullivan, and I have 2 special guests with me today that are going to help bring back the era from the 1930s when the celebrities came to Del Mar. One of the first special guests we have here is a 1934 Packard, driven and owned by Mrs. Packard. Our second special guest is Mr. Joe Harper, and he's the director, president, general manager, and CEO of the Del Mar Thoroughbred Club.
Very good. You got all that right. I don't always get that right, you know. Every time I asked for a raise, they gave me another title instead, you know. That's the trouble. Welcome to Del Mar. Welcome to the paddock.
Thank you for having me here. This is great. So, Joe, can you tell me a little bit about your family and, you know, your history of Del Mar and being here in this wonderful place all these years?
It's a great spot. Well, I think, the whole genesis of this place was from Hollywood, and so was I, actually. I got started in Hollywood. My grandfather was Cecil B. DeMille, the old director, producer. My uncle was Anthony Quinn, an actor.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I had a lot of Hollywood in my blood and grew up there. Even was in a couple of pictures when I was a kid, and I just I knew a lot of the people that actually were involved in Del Mar. I'd met them on the set of various pictures, and of course this was a little later than 1930s, but it always was kind of fun. My mother raised horses and bred them, and was the first woman president of the California Breeders Association.
Oh my
and
goodness.
she was at the track every day, every morning at 5 o'clock to watch her
Every day.
horses.
And
So
what time were you at the track?
well, in those days, I like to sleep in. Yeah, nowadays I'm at the track about 5 o'clock in the morning. So, but I don't need as much sleep as I did then, I guess.
That's great. So some of the celebrities that you came in contact with, Joe, were?
Yeah, well, a lot. I mean, of course, Bing Crosby was our founder. Bing
Right.
Crosby and Pat O'Brien, and in those early days, the track opened 1937. It was. I think the board of directors had Randolph Scott on the board and Oliver Hardy from Oliver and Hardy, and we had just a lot of people would come down. Bing was a really good marketing guy,
Was he?
And to kick this track off to where it made sense and made money, Bing would invite all his pals from Hollywood down.
Oh, how fun.
Now, you got to remember, 1937, Bing Crosby was probably one of the biggest stars in Hollywood at that time. And in those days, a lot of the stars were owned by the studios, but not in
Sure.
Bing's case. Although Bing did most of his work at Paramount, he was also a big recording star and had a band and did all that. So Bing kind of made that transition to more of an independent guy, and hence he had a lot of power. So when Bing went to Jimmy Durante or Bob Hope or Red Skelton and said, I want you to come down this Saturday and entertain the folks at Del Mar, they came down. And they came down in the 20s and 30s, the 40s, hundreds of them all at once on these weekends. You'd have people like Barbara Stanwyck and Robert Taylor and of course Red Skelton and Bing Crosby. Of course, Jimmy Durante was here every day. He actually started renting a house on the beach. Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball. Every day they owned a house in Del Mar. Of course, I think Harry James and Betty Grable, his wife. They were here almost every day. So it really put Del Mar on the map was the stars.
The stars.
Most of whom were humans. A couple of them were horses.
That's right.
The great Seabiscuit came down here.
Yes.
Bing was good friends with Seabiscuit's owner, and he called him up and said, how about bringing Seabiscuit down for a little match race? Poof. And in 1938 he showed up.
Oh my gosh.
Along with a whole lot of people.
A lot of people.
Yeah. So the whole track really got started and was a success because of Hollywood and all the celebrities.
Mm-hmm.
And it keeps up a little bit, I think. Now, of course, all those stars that I mentioned most of them are all gone now.
I know.
But we've got Tim Conway's here almost every day when he's not working.
Is that right?
And he'll drag down Bob Newhart and people like that. They came down after the last few years. We've had Kevin Costner and Jessica Simpson and Uma Thurman. Just a whole lot of just about once a week there's somebody that's stumbling down from Hollywood to be at Del Mar.
But probably not like the old days. The old days were really a legend, and I read Jimmy Durante used to entertain in the paddock area here, or
That's right.
Or the terrace of the Turf Club.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was an interesting story, and this was told to me by Bob Hope once when he came down here late in his life. When Bing called Bob and said, come on down to Del Mar. I want you to come down and we'll clown around after the races. And every Saturday there was a dinner party they'd put on up in the Turf Club, open to the public. And so Jimmy Durante would play the piano, and Bob would tell jokes, and Bing would sing. And Bing and Bob got carrying on and making jokes and singing together, and it worked. It was just like magic. All of a sudden, when the evening was over, they started looking at each other going, I think we ought to make a picture this way. And that's where all the road pictures were born, right up here on the old patio in the Turf Club at Del Mar. And Bob Hope told me that. He said, we went back to Hollywood and said, we got an idea, guys, for a picture, and off they went. And then they made probably, 5 or 6 of those pictures that were a big success.
Oh, that is so fabulous. That's great. Well, thank you so much, Joe, for your celebrity history. And there's a lot of that.
Well, and it continues.
That's right. That's right. And I'd also like to thank the owner of Mrs. Packard, Larry Cornwell. And thanks for joining us.
Meets the surf at Del Mar.
Welcome back to Del Mar Heydays. I'm your host, Florence Kanata. What a fabulous interview that was, and what a great car. Stay tuned. We'll be right back for more Del Mar history.
Del Mar, California, a magnificent seaside community, a beautiful blend of old and new, whose residents hold dear the important things in life. Discovered by Hollywood celebrities in the 1930s, this quiet little village became a getaway for the stars and a showbiz destination after Bing Crosby opened the Del Mar racetrack in 1937.
Have you ever heard of a TV show called I Love Lucy? You may have seen some reruns on cable TV. Even before they had the popular TV show, Lucy and Desi Arnaz made Del Mar their summer getaway. They owned racehorses and loved going to the track. Another Hollywood couple to frequent the racetrack was Betty Grable and her husband, Harry James. Betty Grable was a very popular film star and lived part-time in Del Mar for 2 decades. She was so taken with Del Mar that she was suspended twice by a Hollywood studio for refusing to work during the Del Mar race season. Perhaps the most famous Hollywood couple to visit Del Mar was Ronald and Nancy Reagan. Before he was governor of California and the 40th president of the United States, he and his wife were both actors in Hollywood. They bred racehorses and were often seen at the racetrack.
Welcome back to Del Mar Heydays. I'm your host, Florence Kanata. We're here today with a very special guest, Paul Frankel. Welcome, Paul, to our show today. Paul is the former owner of Kirby's Cafe. How long have you owned Kirby's Cafe?
I owned it for about 10 years, starting in 1989 through about 1998.
And what famous people frequented Kirby's Cafe in the old days?
Well, we were known for having pictures of famous celebrities and guests and athletes on the wall, and some of them that I remember: Burt Bacharach, Lee Iacocca, Tim Conway, Wilt Chamberlain, Wayne Gretzky, Warren Buffett, just to name a few.
Tell me a little bit about your experiences with Warren Buffett.
Warren was a customer, and I didn't realize it was him at the time when he came in. I just kind of was in disbelief. I didn't think it was him, and turned out he was there, and I didn't have a chance to talk to him because I kind of dismissed it as not really being possible. He was at the time the second richest man in the world, and but he really was there for lunch a couple of days while he was at a board meeting at the L'Auberge.
Oh, how interesting. It sounds like a lot of exciting celebrities visited your cafe in the old days.
Yeah.
How about famous jockeys? Did they also come and frequent your cafe?
Yeah, we had Chris McCarron's probably my favorite, probably a very nice person and very friendly. Also Corey Nakatani, Bill Shoemaker. We had lots of famous owners as well. Obviously, being local, Sid and Jenny Craig came in, and just a lot. The horse industry is such a big part of Del Mar that horse racing that we always had folks from the track.
Did famous trainers come in as well to your cafe?
Yeah. Dick Mandela, we got to be good friends with him, and of course he was the trainer of